How many of you know what this means? It's applause and sign language. Do it. It's kind of fun. Let's send a little applause to Melissa over here. That was beautiful, beautiful. And to Philip and to our music team. They're amazing. To our incredible AV team back there. Thank you so much for all that you do. Send a little love over here. Send a little love over there. It feels good, doesn't it? So that's American Sign Language. That's our applause. When I was in Colorado, when our family lived in Colorado, there was this grove of aspen trees. And every now and then, especially when I was having kind of a hard week, I would take a hike. And about halfway through the hike, there was this really dense grove of aspen. And you'd walk into it. And sometimes I would just sit there and be still and look at the leaves. And I would imagine that the aspens were saying, "You're doing great. You're doing great. Hang in there." Like they're just cheering for me. Sometimes we need that. And sometimes it would drop confetti. Like, "Oh, you're so amazing." Dropping golden confetti everywhere. It's nice to have that kind of support and encouragement in our life, isn't it? Wherever we might be able to get it. So welcome to week 5 of our series, The Creator in You. We are creating together beautiful things. How do we create a life like that tree of life? How do we do that intentionally so that our life is an expression of our highest potential? So we've been going through this series talking about that seed of potential that is within each of us, that unique divine core, and how that seed gets planted into rich consciousness and all the beliefs and the values that then get rooted, that taproot of purpose, and then all those values that anchor us so that something can sprout into reality, so that we can have these roots that go out and then emerge into the branches. Last week we talked about innovation, creativity, and all that springs forth from those daily disciplines, from the structures we create. And this week that brings us to a little green teacher. This is our little green teacher for today. A small, humble little leaf. And you might not have noticed, but when you came in today, did you notice there were a few leaves around you? We're surrounded by them every single day. So the statistic is the average mature oak tree has anywhere from 100,000 to 250,000 leaves on it. So in a property like this, we have 7.5 acres here, we might be looking at around 10, 20 million leaves that greet us every Sunday morning. And they say, "You're amazing." Have you ever thought about it? And all of these leaves are like tiny miracles that surround us. We get to walk in the midst of these tiny miracles every single day. And they are tiny miracles because what these leaves do is they sit out there all day long with all their friends and they receive the light. They absorb the light. And from that light, they do something really amazing. They convert that light into energy. That's what photosynthesis is. It's converting light, sunlight, into energy, and that energy into the sugars and the nutrients that feed the whole tree. The whole tree is nourished by all these little tiny leaves working together, each doing their own thing, their own miraculous thing of transforming light into energy. And that's what brings us here to week 5 of our series. So this week, we are channeling the wisdom of these little green friends and absorbing the light that is spirit. So this is a week to receive the light of spirit into our being so that that light can be transformed and transmuted into energy that expresses as zeal and enthusiasm. And from that energy, moving us into actions that feed our higher purpose. Just like that little leaf is taking the sunlight, converting it into energy, and then feeding those nutrients into the tree. That's what's ours to do. So the questions that we ask as we move into this week: 1, what are the actions that are critical to fulfilling your purpose, your mission? And how do you generate the energy to do those things? How do you create that kind of energy? So Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, he describes zeal, the power of zeal, as the inward fire of the soul that urges humankind onward, regardless of the intellectual mind of caution and conservatism. So our mind might say, I don't know, I don't see it, maybe not. But zeal within us causes us to do things, to have energy to do things that are aligned with something higher, that overcomes the mind. Zeal is one of Unity's 12 powers. So in Unity, we have 12 spiritual capacities that when they work together, they allow us to express our divine potential, that Christ consciousness within us. And zeal is one of them. The Fillmores believed that all of these capacities are within all of us, and all of these capacities can be cultivated. We can work on them. We can get better at them. So in his book, The Revealing Word, where he translates a lot of, he interprets a lot of the symbols that are in the Bible, and he talks about his 12 powers, the 12 powers, he calls zeal the mighty force that incites the winds, the tides, and the storms. It urges the planet on its course and spurs the ant to greater exertion. It is the urge behind all things. Zeal is the affirmative impulse of existence. Its command is to go forward, go forward. Take this energy and do something with it. Do something with it. You ever gotten so excited? You just want to go do something. I just got to do something. I'm so excited. So, and to be clear, this is not the wavy inflatable tube man, you know. I'm so excited. I'm so excited, you know. That's what Linda Marcella Whitsett, who wrote Divine Audacity, she would call this frenetic energy. You know, this is enthusiasm that has nowhere to go. It's not focused on anything. This is what enthusiasm looks like when it's not connected to wisdom, when it's not connected to understanding. It's just like, ah! It's kind of fun, but it doesn't feed the tree, right? It doesn't feed the tree. It doesn't feed our purpose. So when we talk about the power of zeal, we're talking about something that is really like this little leaf. It's that ability to take that light and to absorb it into energy that then funnels towards a deeper purpose. That's the purpose of zeal. So Charles Fillmore talks about transformation, but he also talks about something called transmutation. And I want to go back to what we've been talking about these past couple of weeks. We've talked about the word create in the Bible. So if we're going to be like this leaf, how does the leaf create? In this series, we started talking about the word bara, which is the first word for create that we see in the Bible, which is in the beginning, God created. God created. And so bara is that this is how God creates. God is always the subject, and then there's creation. So we talked about that as inspiration. So that word, bara, is used about 50 times in the Bible. And then last week, we talked about this other word for create, yatsar. And yatsar is collecting the dust. It's a pottery term. It's collecting the dust and turning it into something else, transforming the resources that are around us into something else. So we talked about that. And in the Bible, it's used about 60 or 70 times, that word yatsar. There is a third word that means to create, and it is used thousands of times throughout the Bible. And that word is asa. Asa is the doing of creation. It's the building and the making and the doing, asa. And it's used a lot. So bara is the seed, it's the inspiration. Yatsar is the innovation, the creativity. And then I think of asa as the leaves. Like, what are we here to do? All these leaves, they're all doing something that feeds the whole tree. So in the book, Keeping a True Lent, Charles Fillmore talks about this word transmutation. And he defines it. So the Webster's definition of transmutation is the conversion of one element into another, conversion of light into nutrients, energy, feeding that tree. It's a transmutation, taking something and turning it into something totally different. In a spiritual sense, Charles Fillmore describes transmutation as a changing in action and character to conform to spiritual standards. It's rethinking how we look at the world. It's reconnecting with that Christ consciousness within and allowing that connection to move us into action, to feed our enthusiasm for doing the work that is ours to do. So he describes it like this. He says, the mind is the crucible. Think about it. It's like, as we're going to mix it all up. The mind is the crucible in which the ideal is transmuted into the real. So the mind is where we can take these divine ideas, this inspiration, our imagination, and we can convert it into something that is tangible, which really is kind of miraculous when you think about it, isn't it? So then he illustrates this principle. So when he's talking about transmutation, he's like, okay, here's an example of what that looks like. And he talks about Jesus and this story where he is feeding the masses. So in this story, and this is a story that's actually in a miracle that's in all of the Gospels. It's one of the few miracles, maybe the only miracle that's in all the Gospels. So I'm going to look at the one from John, and it says that, Jesus is out there and he's doing amazing things. People are being healed. He has these incredible teachings, and the word is getting out, and there's an energy. There's a buzz. Can you imagine if word got out, there's this guy and people are healing and blind people can see and people are hearing this, and that possibility, that seed is getting planted in their consciousness. This is possible. I want to see this. This is possible. I got to see this. So they leave their homes, they leave their villages, and they're like, oh, I hear this guy's in town. Like, he was trying to be kind of low key, but they saw him like, oh, there they are. There's Jesus, there's his disciples, and they're going that way. Let's all follow. And so they did. The masses start coming in, and Jesus sees them. It says he looked up and he saw a large crowd. And of course, in Unity, we think about this metaphysically. What could this represent? I like to think of this as mass consciousness. It's like, I see a crowd. This is the thoughts that become the dominant thought. Like, there is something that's being attracted to this Christ energy. It's when our thoughts suddenly start shifting and saying, ooh, I see a higher possibility than maybe anything that I've ever seen before. And so he sees this large crowd, and they are coming toward him. Think about this as when your thoughts start moving toward higher consciousness, Christ consciousness. I'm moving my thoughts in that direction. And Jesus sees this, and he turns to Philip, who is the disciple that in Unity, when we talk about the 12 powers, Philip represents the power of power, the power of power. So he turns to Philip, and he says, where are we going to buy bread for these people to eat? And he's kind of messing with them, I think, because he knows. He's like, hey, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think we're going to do with all these people coming, Philip? And then it says he said this to test him. Like, okay, all right, that's how he's going to be. He says this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. That's what the scripture says. He said this to test Philip, but he knew what he was going to do. And to do, in this sense, it's not the Hebrew word, it's the Greek word. But this is, he knew what he was going to create. He knew what he was going to create. And so he's going to that power of power to say, what do you see here? And Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to even get a little. There is not enough money. There is not enough bread. There is not enough for this crowd. And that's what happens when our power center is not aligned with our Christ knowing. We look at what's out there and like, I don't think that's going to do it. I don't think I'm powerful enough to do this. We don't have enough. And then one of his disciples, Andrew, and Andrew represents the power of strength, says to him, he says, hey, there's a boy over there, and he has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. So here we have strength that's saying, oh, we've got something. We've got something. We're not starting from nothing. Here's what we have. And then he says, but what are they among so many people? So we have strength, but when our strength is not connected to that Christ consciousness, we can say, I'm not strong enough. I'm not powerful enough. I'm not enough. We don't have enough. We have a little, but it's not going to be enough. And have you ever felt like the weight of that when we think that way? It's like, I don't have enough to do this. I know I've got this big thing we want to do. We have this big vision for what we want to create together. But how are we going to do that? We don't have enough. And so Philip's doing the math. Everything's not adding up. And Jesus says, make the people sit down. And I love this because it's so simple. Make the people sit down. So Jesus doesn't say, hey, everybody sit down. He tells his disciples, in unity we would say those qualities. He tells the source of our power, our strength, our will, our understanding, love, like pull all of our spiritual capacities into that alignment with the Christ of who we are. You tell those people, those masses of thought, tell them to sit down. And that was important because they all had to do something. That miracle was not just food appears. Everybody had to do something. Tell them all, sit down. And that's important because what would you do if you were about to receive a meal? You would first sit down. So he's putting them into this posturing to receive that which they have been visioning. So before the manifestation, there is the alignment, mind, body, spirit. It's that alignment. Sit down and prepare yourself to receive that which is coming. Make the people sit down. And so the people sit down. And I like to think of it kind of like, imagine all these people sitting. It says the grass is green. He said earlier in the book of Mark, he's like, they are like sheep without a shepherd. And yet here they are in this green grass, and he has them sit down. He is shepherding them. And I think of them as being rooted. Sit down, root yourself, trust, root yourself in faith and strength and power and will. And so the version in Mark says he ordered them all to get the people to sit down. And in Mark, it actually goes so far as to say he ordered them to have them sit down in groups on the green grass. So this just wasn't just, hey, everybody sit down. It's sit and organize yourself. We talked about that with the trunk. It's like, get organized, create your systems, your structure, organize yourself in groups because you're about to receive. You're about to receive. So they're posturing for that. And so they sat. Have them sit. That's listening to that Christ spirit. Okay, I'm getting this calling that says receive. And even though in my mind it seems like there's not enough, I'm going to listen to that higher truth and I will sit. And I will, and we do this together. When we do this together, like leaves on the tree, we do this together, we can create a miracle that's bigger than the sum of our parts. And so they sat, and then Jesus takes the loaves. That's that Yatsar energy. Is like, take what is. Here's what we already have. What are the resources that we have? Gather all the resources that we have because we have something. We always have something that we can start with. So recognize what you have, and then the transmutation. So he takes what he has and he gives thanks for it. And there is something that is a multiplier about gratitude. I think of gratitude as a form of enthusiasm. You know, there's the gratitude where it's like, hey, thanks. And then there's the gratitude that's like, hey, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Like the more energy we put into our gratitude, the greater the miracle. Yeah, enthusiasm comes from the word entheos. It means in God. When we are enthusiastic, we are in that divine flow. And so can we level that up a little bit? You know, there's like kind of excited, but then there's like, oh my gosh, can you imagine? You're about to receive a miracle. How exciting is that? And so the bread receives the loaves, blesses the loaves, puts that energy into it, that transmutational energy into it, and then out it goes. And the loaves go out into the crowd, moving through the crowd. So this is a miracle of motion. This is a miracle of passing something from one person to the next person to the next person. Take what is yours to receive and then share. Take what is yours to receive and share. It's a give and a flow. It's a miracle of the masses. And it's the miracle of the tree and the leaves. And it's the miracle of community, a spiritual community like this. What can we do when we're all receiving and sharing and receiving and sharing? So that's what I love about this miracle. Now, last year, there was this really cool story about a woman in Chelsea, Michigan. She had a small independent bookstore, and her name was Michelle Tuplin. And she'd outgrown her little store. And so she decided that she was going to move it to another location that was a couple blocks away, still downtown, but just a few blocks down the street. And she had about 9,000 books. And she wanted to get them from one place to the other, but she didn't want to have like an expensive move or, waste a lot of boxes and tape. So she thought, what could we do? How could we get these books from here to there and keep them in order, reshelve them, make it really easy? So she had an idea. She asked her community to help. She had this idea of a human chain, and the community showed up. Over 300 people showed up, and they created not just one, two human chains that went from the old store to the new store. One book at a time, one idea at a time, one small action at a time. And within a couple of hours, the entire store was relocated. So that's what happens when we take little actions, little actions, little actions, but we do it intentionally. We do it together. We do it for a common purpose. It's not just about the manifestation. It's about who we are, who we become in the sharing and the working together. So that is, to me, the real miracle is what happens within us. There's a quote by Norman Vincent Peale that speaks to this, I think, really well. It says, think excitement, talk excitement, act out excitement. So from within, think excitement, talk excitement, and then act out of that excitement. And you are bound to become an excited person. Life will take on new zest, deeper interest, and greater meaning. We can cultivate this as a quality within us. You can think, talk, and act yourself into dullness and into monotony and into unhappiness. Some of us are really good at that. We can talk ourselves into all kinds of overwhelm, all kinds of anxiety. But by the same process, you can build up inspiration. You can build up excitement. You can build up that surging depth of joy. That we can do that by connecting with the light and converting that light into energy. So I don't know if any of you have noticed, I've been, when I flip through TV, Netflix and things like that, have you noticed there's a lot of kind of apocalyptic TV shows and movies out right now? I mean, there's a lot of them. I was scanning through. Here's a few that I found. This is all current stuff that's on TV right now. The Last of Us is about a fungal pandemic, collapse of society. Fallout is about nuclear apocalypse. That's exciting. I want to watch more of that. Silo is about humanity living underground after an apparent catastrophe. The Walking Dead is, of course, the classic apocalyptic zombie movie. Rapture is a whole series built around a climate crisis, social instability, prophetic catastrophe, and apocalyptic religion. So yeah, let's turn that into a whole series. And then there's Greenland Part 2, because Part 1 was so successful, which is a continuation of a comet disaster story. So give us more. Oh, this is so entertaining. I think the problem is not so much that we are culturally pessimistic. The problem is that we have gotten really, really good at using our creativity to imagine the worst that could happen. What's the worst that could happen? Let's put ourselves there. And what if, instead of using our imagination in that way, what if we started using our imagination to picture an ideal world, or to picture the things that we could do to make the world better, to picture a future worth creating? There is a quote in the book of Romans, "Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit and serve the Lord." One of my first Unity mentors said, whenever you see the word "the Lord" in your mind, translate "the law," because you're talking about spiritual law. Do not lag in your zeal. Don't let your enthusiasm for what is good wane just because everybody else is, or because they tell you you're la-la or woo-woo or whatever. Like, what if we don't let our zeal lag? What if we embrace it? Ardent in spirit, serving the law of divine order, which says that as we hold on to that energy, we create a different reality. So there is also, in the midst of all this apocalyptic stuff. There's a new trend that has started emerging with artists, and you see it in the internet, you see it on Pinterest. It's called, I love this, solar punk. Have you heard of solar punk? So this is an entire website where artists can share their vision of what the future looks like when everything works. And so there's examples on here of things like a community garden. And we've taken that vision, we're bringing that vision to life right here at Unity of Dallas. Like, what would it look like if everything worked? There's one for animal advocacy. What would it look like if we were proactive in taking care of animals on the planet? What would it look like? The next one, repurposing a mall. What if we took the resources we had and used them in a different way to create a more sustainable future? What would that look like? There's one on restorative justice. What does that look like when we make things right? What does it look like? And then, of course, we are taking these ideas here at Unity of Dallas and putting them into manifestation. So we have a community garden. We're building these things. We're creating the vision, and then not just creating the vision, but can you feel the enthusiasm around what we are creating here in our community, here in our garden, here in the city of Dallas and beyond? So that's what we have the ability to do. Lessons from our little leaf. One, soak up that light. Pray and meditate and feel all the good that is yours. Get excited. Convert that light into energy through your thoughts, through your intentionality, through your words, through your actions, and then convert that excitement into intentional, focused, disciplined action. So my dad is 87 years old. I'm staying at their house right now. He loves rom-coms. You know, those romantic comedies, like, so we watch rom-coms together. And it's really fun because, you know, in a rom-com, there's always like all this tension. And at the end, the kiss. And every time we get to the end, to the kiss, my dad cheers. Yay! It's my favorite part. I have a friend back in New York. Her name is Sheila. And every day, at the end of the day, she walks out on her back deck and you can see the sun setting from her back deck. And as soon as the sun goes below the horizon, she cheers. Yes! That was a good one. I don't know if she means that was a good sunset or that was a good day or that was just, you know, a day of my life. She cheers every single day at the end. That was amazing. And I was talking to my daughter Jenna yesterday and I said, you know, I kind of felt like at the end of the day, I could look out in Colorado and see those aspen trees. And it was like they were saying, yes, what a fabulous day that was. And Jenna said to me, she's like, you know, they weren't just cheering for you at night. They were cheering for you all day long. You just might not have seen it, but they were there. And isn't it good to know that you've got that kind of support? Sometimes it's right in front of you, and sometimes you just know it's there. And that's what we are for each other. We are that encouragement, that enthusiasm. So let's cheer for each other like that. Does that sound good? Yeah, because that's what leaves do. And that's what we can do too, if we dare to believe. Ba-da-bam! Okay, I was working up to that one the whole time, so thanks for that. Thanks for that. All right, in Matthew it says, let your light shine before others so they may see your good works. They can see what you're doing, what you're creating, and give glory to your Father in heaven. So for today's affirmation, I invite you to affirm not for you, but for the people around you. Look at someone around you and let's affirm for those people. Maybe give them a little bit of encouragement and love and affirm to someone near you. You are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. I recognize and celebrate the Christ in you. I recognize and celebrate the Christ in you. And so it is. And so it is. Take a deep breath in. And let's take that energy and that enthusiasm and that zeal into a time of meditation. Take a deep breath in. And notice what it feels like to be centered and grounded in enthusiasm. Notice what it feels like to be centered and grounded in the power of zeal. With beautiful anticipation for all the good that is ours to be and to do and to have. What is the idea? What is the possibility that is giving you energy right now? What excites you? And what would it look like to act upon that enthusiasm? What are the actions, small daily actions, that allow you to take that enthusiasm and focus it on your purpose? Focus it on the development of your spiritual gifts. Focus it on your divine purpose, your mission. Take a deep breath in and feel the beauty of that transmutation, receiving the light, knowing that light is here for you always. All we have to do is open and receive and embrace and embody that light. Let it move through us. Let it give us vitality and energy and strength and power so that we can do the things that are ours to do. So take a deep breath in and just feel the deliciousness of the power of zeal. Take a deep breath in. And as we release it, we are grateful for this divine presence alive in us as individuals and alive in us as a community, receiving the light and sharing it, receiving the light and sharing it, receiving the light and blessing each other through the energy that we have sourced from Spirit. And so we take this energy, let us share it with our prayer chaplains, our prayer box, all the prayers of this community. Bring them into your consciousness, those prayers that have been shared and those prayers that live in your heart. Open your awareness to include everyone in this community and all the loved ones that we hold in our heart. Together, we share this knowing, this light, knowing that it nurtures and nourishes all of us. And so it is. And so it is.